Hello, I'm Dennis Shapiro. I'm chair of the Industrial Advisory Board of the IEEE Consumer Electronics Society. About 2 years ago, in light of our inabilities to attract sponsorships and in view of membership statistics, we decided that it would be good to examine our value and brand and mission from the vantage of young, bright eyes from the best management graduate schools in the world. We embarked on a program, and at the suggestion of the Dean of the MIT School of Management, Sloan School of Management, we recruited Matthew Swatzell to manage our program. I'm going to introduce Matthew to you, and we will go on from there.
Thank you, Dennis. As Dennis mentioned, my name is Matt Swatzell. I am a graduate student at the MIT Sloan School of Management. Prior to starting business school, my background was in computer science and mathematics, as well as technology strategy consulting. So over the last 14 months, I've been working with Dennis and the team I'm about to introduce you to create these recommendations for the IEEE Consumer Electronics Society and how they can best move forward to solve both their membership retention and engagement problems, as well as the overall missing value that we're going to talk more about. So next, I'd like to introduce you to the rest of the team, starting with Dr. Richard Oxland, who represented us from Europe.
Thanks, Matt. So my name is Richard Oxland. I'm a graduate student at the IESE Business School in Spain. Before that, I was working in the R&D division of Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. I spent 6 years there, and before that, I completed a PhD in electronics in my home country of Scotland.
Okay, thank you, Richard. I'm Bao Di from China, and now I'm a MBA student in Tsinghua University in the School of Economy and Management. And before MBA, I have about 5 years in the space industry in China. And before that, I had a master degree in the automation science and electronic engineering.
Thanks, Bao. My name is Pratik Kotangale. Right now, I am pursuing my MBA from Department of Management Studies, IIT Delhi. Before that, I had 2.5 years of experience in Wipro as project engineer, and I also hold a BTech degree in computer engineering from College of Engineering, Pune.
Perfect. So over the last 14 months, the team and I have been really trying to understand the problems in the environment that the Consumer Electronics Society is acting in. Through that research, we've actually interviewed close to 150 people around the world, pretty much equally distributed between the United States, various countries in Europe, China and Japan, and India, really seeking to understand across the world and across the entire consumer electronics membership base, what are the problems they're seeing, why aren't members joining, why are existing members leaving, and what can we do to turn that around? So during these interviews, we quickly realized that there were two problems facing the society. The first of these was the fact that people did not know the society even existed. Unless you were a member of the Consumer Electronics Society, when you mentioned the Consumer Electronics Society, you generally got a blank stare, even from people practicing in the field. Furthermore, when members were in the society, they weren't able to articulate the benefits of being in the society. So that insufficient awareness was a key problem. The second piece to that was also a overly broad mission. When you think about consumer electronics, it's an incredibly broad field, ranging from everything from the speakers and the audio equipment in your automobile to your toaster that's connected to your cell phone. And when you look at a field that broad and all the different aspects of that, what you quickly see is that the society was trying to take care of everything for everybody, and as a result was really taking care of nothing for anybody. Now, the next thing we want to talk about is really the more detailed findings we had around that. So we broadly bucketed these into 4 categories. So one is insufficient awareness. This is really that overarching problem I just mentioned. But the second one is missing value. Even if every member or every potential member knew of every offering that the Consumer Electronics Society had, what we learned is they wouldn't want to be members. So it wasn't a matter of just insufficient awareness, it was actually missing value, a value proposition that wasn't properly defined, and as a result, the programming needed to support and engage these members wasn't there. The next thing is demographic issues. The balance and makeup of the membership isn't what it needs to be. It wasn't evenly distributed between academia and industry, as well as a variety of other demographics. People were joining the society and not meeting the types of people they wanted to meet, not building the networks they wanted to network with. And lastly, changing preferences. The society has been around for many years, and when you look at the programming offered, it is the programming that would have been relevant to a membership base from many years ago. And as a result, we see that the preferences of the newer members, and most importantly the future members, is very different, and the society is not addressing those needs. So we have a detailed report that we made available, but in that we outline 19 specific findings that fall under each of these 4 categories, but we don't have time to cover those today. So what I want to move over to next is the recommendations. How do we address these things that we just learned about? So we had 3 categories of recommendations, and the 3 are ordered in terms of priority. Now the first of these is developing a new mission. So when you look at the society's mission, I already explained to you how it is overly broad. Now, because of that, the society doesn't necessarily have a good idea of what types of programs and initiatives it can launch moving forward. And furthermore, when it starts to try to roll those changes out, different members expect different things from the society. And as a result, nobody ever agrees on what should happen next. So defining a mission is going to be key to eventually improving these recommendations as we go forward there. The next thing is new management procedures and policies. We won't go too much into detail in here, but there are certain table stakes policies and procedural changes that the society can make that will have outsized impacts on improving membership retention and member engagement. The last thing, and we'll talk a little bit about this in detail here, is new programming changes, new initiatives that the society can launch that are going to be interesting to the members we interviewed, things that really got people excited as we talked to them during our face-to-face interviews. So the next thing we want to talk about is our first recommendation. And throughout the remainder of this talk, we'll actually focus more on the following recommendations we have. But the first one is really to define a new mission, something that's going to serve as guide rails for the society moving forward. And we talk to a lot of members. And what's interesting is when we talk to members in the United States or in China or India or Europe, many countries within Europe, what we learned was that members were always excited about the idea of bringing a product to life, about that kind of entrepreneurial spirit, about the innovation required, about the value chain that happens from the time you first come up with the idea for a consumer electronics product to the time a retailer first sells it to the time a consumer first purchases that product. Now, to illustrate this, we didn't seed this example to people when we were interviewing them, but this idea came up in interviews across every part of the world. People said, I would like to be a part of a society that is like this, and specifically they said, I would like for the Consumer Electronics Society to be like this. Now the other reason that we think that this is a good value is we asked people, what is the article or content or piece of information you've gotten from the society over the last few years that's been the most interesting? And organically, many people referred back to an article written about 50 years ago, believe it or not, that specifically talked about how the color TV was created. And the challenge there was not one guy designing a color TV. It was not one company designing a color TV, but it was in a group of companies, a group of individuals, a group of different competing standards that all had to kind of come together, coalesce, and eventually result in a finished product that we all watch most days. And as a result of that, people said, I got a lot of value out of that. I started to understand how these devices actually come to the consumer. So when you combine all of this, what we realized is the society's existing membership wants this to be the mission they have. They want this to be the society that they're a part of. So as the society looks around for a new mission, why not do what they're already looking for? And that's what we found here. So we do recommend that the society institute this. Now there are another few details, or there are some additional few details about this that we think are important. First of all, the Consumer Electronics Society does do a lot of very good work today. Its involvement in standard setting, the collegial and familiar atmosphere of the society's meetings are all great things. This mission doesn't negate any of those. The things that are going well now can continue to go well far into the future. And the next thing is, this lets every member or every chapter in every part of the world define what part of consumer electronics it wants to focus on and what part of that value chain it wants to focus on, while still serving that core mission of the society. So if a member in Delhi decides that they want to conduct a training on user-focused design, what society to host that? The Consumer Electronics Society is a pretty good one. Or say that a member in Boston wants to learn more about how to explain his new idea to a marketing team so that they can create promotional material for it. That's also part of what could be considered in the society's scope. Finally, you could have an entrepreneur in San Francisco who says, I want to build a company that sells this device that I think I can create. How do I go about it? Well, this society is uniquely positioned to help him through that process in conjunction with other societies in the IEEE. So kind of moving on a little bit, once you have that mission, you've set a framework. You have a way of deciding what programming and what policies are good for you. And that's really what we want to talk about next, is once you have that framework, how do you decide those policies? And we looked at what the society does today versus what members want it to do. And we came up with 3 recommendations that we think are very low effort compared to the benefits they'll bring. And we're calling these the policy changes. So the first of these is to improve the online presence and the community that the CE Society has built there. So when you look at all of 2017, there were 5 Twitter posts for the entire Consumer Electronics Society. Much of the information that was on the website was somewhat outdated. The LinkedIn page was private, and there was no publicly available Facebook page, and much less any of the other new forms of social media that are out there. Future generations are going to look to those streams to come up with their programs that they want to be a part of, to decide what societies they want to join, and to see new content that interests them. The CE Society today produces a lot of very good content that is very interesting to a lot of people in the world, but they can't find it. So the first thing to do is fix that. Make it so that if we're producing content that is interesting to people, that they can find it through the ways that they're already looking for other content that's interesting to them. Once you have that, we really looked at localization as the next thing. So while the vast majority of IEEE members are fluent in English, nearly 100% of all of the content that the Consumer Electronics Society produces is written in English. And one thing we learned from our interviews is, while in certain parts of the world they can speak it, they can read it, and they have no problem actually understanding the content, it gives a perception of everything being very US focused. And as a result, they instead choose to join local societies and local organizations. So by actually producing the same content that we produce in English, but in different localized languages, we can actually get those benefits and make it appear that the society is very focused on those areas, because the society actually is very focused on those areas. So we recommend producing localized content, specifically starting with various regions in China to be first, to kind of combat that perception of US centricism, as well as to increase the engagement in those parts of the world. And the last and kind of most important, the last of these recommendations that we want to talk about today is better advertising the events that we're already hosting. So as I mentioned before, the CE Society puts out a lot of very good events. Unfortunately, unless you're a CE Society member, you have no way of knowing they exist. So we recommend the society start advertising the local events it's hosting, obviously through the social media channels we talked about earlier, but through other services such as meetup.com or university listservs or corporate bulletin boards at large institutions in that area. Really kind of getting the word out that the CE Society is hosting these events, getting potential members in the door into your meetings, at which point you can then capture them as long-term members of the society if the value proposition is there. Finally, we want to touch on programming. So you institute these management policies, and they go well. You have the new mission that's guiding things, but at the end of the day, there still has to be a reason members want to join. There has to be a value they get out of this. And that's this last thing we're talking about. So in our written report, we provide about 9 programming changes we recommend. Here we've condensed it down to the most important 3. So the first is to increase industry partnerships through hackathons and hands-on workshops. So what that means is, when you think about a hackathon, what it is it's a way to get people very engaged for a very short amount of time into a particular technology or a particular problem. And this is appealing to companies for several reasons. One, companies can come in and actually have engineers working on their technology, which is fantastic. 2, they can also be screening for talent, finding people who are very good at these technologies that they're producing, as well as the ideas and so on. So we recommend doing that both to increase the membership engagement on one end, but also the company's willingness to engage and potentially sponsor the society on the other end. We next recommend a career mentorship program. So one of the hardest things to do is to keep people engaged in the society over the long term, get people to join once and then to stay members over time. And so finding something that is appealing to both people that have been in the society for 20 years and people that have been in the society for 1 week is hard to do. But what we found was a mentorship program accomplishes that. Senior members in the society, people who have been members, are IEEE fellows for many years, said I would like to mentor people. I would like to have people that I help guide in their career. That would be fulfilling for me. Junior members and student members were always excited about the idea of having somebody who'd been down this road, there to define things for them and help them along that pathway. The third bullet in this area is around kind of building career roadmaps. So on a similar note to the mentorship programs, the consumer electronics field today for engineers has a huge variety of potential career paths. And if you're a young student or a junior engineer coming out into that world, it can be a bit daunting is what we learned. If the society can actually produce some roadmaps saying here is a potential career path for somebody interested in this, here's another one for somebody interested in something else, and 10, 15 of those based on different pathways that show a few things. One is kind of what the timing might look like in an idealized world. Two would be how the members would have to advance themselves, what certifications, what trainings, what knowledge they would have to have at different parts of their career. And three, and most importantly for the society, is how the society can help them achieve those goals. So with that, we would actually be able to help people, even if they weren't part of this mentorship program, advance their career. And as long as those guidelines and the roadmaps followed them over the long time, over a long time horizon, they would continue to be interested in the society and willing members. So with that, that's really what we wanted to talk to you about today. Again, we think that the society really needs to develop a new mission, and we think the idea of bringing consumer electronics to life is where that mission should be, although we do encourage the society to internally reflect upon that. We also introduced a set of management policies and procedure changes that we think should be implemented soon and can be done easily and effectively, and have very outsized benefits compared to the effort required. And third, we think that there should be new programming introduced that is appealing to a wider membership base to get people to say, yes, I want to pay my Consumer Electronics Society membership dues, and I'm excited about the value it provides. There's a written report that goes along with this that provides much more detail, as well as other recommendations in all three categories we talked about. So I would encourage folks to read that, but hopefully this has been helpful for you. Thank you.
Of what you and your team were working on. Congratulations for getting it done, getting it here to Las Vegas on time, and your presentation yesterday to the board and for this video session today. I want to introduce Dr. Narissa Nan Chu, who is a member of the Industry Advisory Board and also a board member of the Consumer Electronics Society, who will join us, and Narissa will be part of the group that will throw some questions at this team and see how they can field them and provide some pearls of wisdom for us to take home. Matt, what really grabbed me here at the CES show, as I walked by the exhibits of, it seemed like thousands of entrepreneurial people. Some of them were companies that had been there for many years. Some of them were startups. Some of them looked like, frankly, dreams, pipe dreams, snake oil, hard to say. But as I walked by, I struggled with the thought of how can I approach these people and talk to them about the Consumer Electronics Society and show them that there would be true value in their joining and becoming members. How would you answer that?
That's a very good question. So I would say, as of today, when you approach somebody with that question, you want to join the Consumer Electronics Society, nobody in there thinks that they're primarily a consumer electronics device. What people think is, I am a headphone manufacturer, or I am an AR/VR company, or I am a drone company. And joining the Consumer Electronics Society doesn't make sense in that context because there are other organizations that tailor to each of those technologies. That's what they would want to be a part of. With this new focus, though, of bringing consumer electronics to life, every one of those companies knows that they're trying to bring a device that they can then sell to consumers. And they're going to be a drone company, and that may be where they get their technical news on how to design their drones, on how to adhere to the latest standards, and so on. But the Consumer Electronics Society is going to be where they go to figure out, how do I know what the users want? How do I design this in a way that it's going to last for a long time? How do I think about, when I'm first deciding what technologies to use and what to integrate, doing it in a way that is going to appeal to customers, not necessarily just in 1 week, but in 2 years and 3 years, and gives me something to build on. And I think that's the value that this new Consumer Electronics Society would provide that is not provided there today. So if we adopt this mission and you go on that walk again, you're going to have a much easier time convincing people to join.
All right, well, let's go to the next step, sponsorship. What value can I offer to a company in exchange for sponsorship of the Consumer Electronics Society? I struggle with that. I struggle with our numbers because I know they're going to say, how many members do you have? Is it growing? If I'm going to sponsor somebody, why shouldn't I sponsor another society that has 10 times as many members? I struggle with that. How can we address that?
You hit the nail on the head. It's something of a chicken and the egg problem, right? If you don't have members, you can't get sponsorship. If you don't have sponsorship, it's hard to get members. And that's why when we laid out these recommendations, what we focused on is things that were appealing to members that were low cost to implement and could be done easily and effectively by the society. So by doing these things, what you're doing is you're increasing the value proposition for members. And then that membership starts to build. And then you have the egg, and the chicken comes later. The industry sponsorship is going to see that the Consumer Electronics Society has a group of engineers that are a part of the organization, that are engaged, that are very interested in bringing consumer electronics to life, that are interested in designing new products that consumers will use, and thinking about how that experience is going to work beginning to end, with a lot of new ideas there. That's a gold mine for companies. You have talented engineers that could potentially be employees, potential companies to acquire, potential competitors to see it beforehand, all of these different options that would be valuable to companies that don't exist today. So I think when you think about how to get that industry engagement there, focusing on industry engagement right out of the gate isn't the way to do that. Build the membership up first, get that membership there, and then all of a sudden, companies are going to want to be there. They'll be knocking on your door. Now, the other piece to that, though, is immediately you can do things that provide one-off value to companies. That's where the hackathons come in. You don't need a long-term, multi-year commitment from a company to sponsor a hackathon. Have them order a few $100s in pizza and provide some devices or some access to APIs, anything like that will help with that first hackathon. And then you have that beginning of a fledgling relationship with these company sponsors.
Okay. Those are, I think, very good avenues for us to explore, both appealing to the potential member or the member and to the potential sponsor or continuing sponsor, hopefully. But let's go back to what you said about maybe the most memorable consumer electronics publication that stick in people's minds, and that was the birth and the development of color television 50 years ago, and yet it's still a compelling story. How do we build on that?
Yes, so there is an obvious avenue there that you could consider, which is to get these companies to work with you to actually publish their stories of their successful devices. It can be devices from many years ago, in which case they're not necessarily worried about the IP, but the journey of a new device from that inception to being a successful consumer electronics device hasn't fundamentally changed in terms of what the key milestones are over time. How you do that the timelines across how long each of those steps take has certainly become much shorter. But that's another way to get the company to be engaged in the society. Now, whether they'll pay you money to do that, that's not something we looked into. But if you're publishing articles about company successes, they're going to be interested in what you're doing, and it's a beginning to a relationship there.
And maybe connecting engineering and marketing. But what about the company's failures? Are they of interest to our people?
Yeah, I think you learn oftentimes more from failures than you do from successes. You see what went wrong, and it's very easy to say, yes, this is where this fell apart, or these are the 3 things that went wrong. Whereas with a success, everything went right, so it's a little harder to say this is the thing that contributes to that given success. So as much as you can, getting ideas from these companies about what didn't go well, or take some of the kind of classic examples of Blu-ray versus the HD DVD. What happened there? Why did one succeed over the other? These are, I think, very good pathways to get that failure side of the story that does help. I think equally splitting between successes and failures would be a good benchmark to strive for.
Reminds me of the shootout between the Sony recorder, TV recorder, and the Narissa, what was the Sony name?
Betamax. Yeah, the other one that survived, Betamax is actually a better brand, I think. The other one, it's been so long. What is the other name? VHS. VHS
and Betamax.
Right. VHS is actually inferior technology. However, somehow the acceptance in the marketplace made it through, while Betamax was totally out of the picture.
Well,
kind of add to that a little bit. This isn't a story just happening in the past. You can see that playing out today when you look at Google Home and Alexa. They're everywhere. We're at the Consumer Electronics Show right now, and they're everywhere here. We can't see the future. Maybe both exist, but it's also equally likely one wins out. That's a success story that maybe we're publishing in the CE magazine 10 years from now.
And then if you think of more questions, just yell. I also like to mention, I think we talk about that on the side, Google Glass and Google Fiber. Not to badmouth Google. I think they learned awful lot from there. And many companies in the industry also learn from their failure. And they restart. And I think the glasses are getting more popular now. All these companies are coming up. So anyway, I do agree with you, Matt, that we should share success stories as well as failure stories, and maybe 50-50. That would benefit everybody. So again, I have high comments to all this team, MIT team, with international representation. Your great report is very impressive, and it opens up our eyes and barriers that the Consumer Electronics Society has been facing for quite some time. But now I would like to actually zoom into the regional differences. So starting from China and then India and get back to Europe to wrap up the whole session, unless Dennis has more questions. So starting with Bo, the representative from Tsinghua University from China. So would you like to comment on the top priority that is unique, or maybe in addition to what Matt has mentioned in his summary, what would be the top value chain regarding to the engineers in China?
Okay, thank you. And I want to mention that in China, there is a booming and developing industry in the consumer electronic field. Now there are so many young professionals and young engineers coming out from China, and they have one request or one demand is that they want to have a guidance, or they want to have some mentor from outside of the school or universities. They want to receive the guidance from the industry, because they have spent so many years in the university and do the academic job, but they want to know how they can have a very promising career. And once they may have an idea from the lab, but they want to put that into reality. They want to bring their idea into the market. So, but they don't know how to do that. They are engineers, but they don't know how to marketing their product. They don't know how to find the suppliers. They don't know how to get access to their capital. So they want to have some guidance from the industry to tell them how to do that. Yeah, I think that's very special in China, especially at this time of a period
of the economic development.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Well, very good. So likewise for Pratik Kantagali from IIT Delhi, India. So could you share the unique requirements or the unique attractions for engineers in India?
Yeah, thank you so much, ma'am. So I have 2 points to make. The number one point which I feel, as much as I have researched, having primary survey from the Indian members as such, the main problems that the members are facing is the local the local membership. That a lot of the members want more and more fellow pre-assessment programs, right? So the main problem that we are facing over here is that the certain members they actually do not know that we actually have a fellow pre-assessment program, and there are certain members who do not find it worth enough to actually join the Consumer Electronics Society, considering more and more fellow pre-assessment programs. So like the recommendations that they would like to provide would be that we can have more and more such fellow pre-assessment programs, so that they can have more better exposure at the global level, and that could actually enhance them, and the confidence factor can increase in the future to actually be a member for a longer time. The other problem that India is facing is that India is a price-centric country, right? So a lot of members, especially students, what they find is that the membership fees that we are asking from them, they find it not worthy enough to actually join in. They do not find the value that we are giving in exchange of the money. They feel that it is too much of so that we are asking from them. So we can tweak or enhance the pricing structure as such, like we can provide them with the freemium models as such, like giving certain services for free for a certain period of time, like say for 2 months, and just let them know that how exactly what kind of services they would be getting in the future, and if they find it out worth enough, they'll actually go forward and increase their membership, giving away the fees which is being required. So we have not recommended lowering the fees, but like tweaking certain policies with respect to price, so that we can have these certain collaborations in the future.
Very good, Pratik. So you're talking about mentoring, hand-holding engineers, and also maybe a incentive pricing structure. Okay, thank you. So last but not the least, Dr. Richard Oxland, I would like you to share the unique requirements in Europe as far as engineers joining the Consumer Electronics Society. What do you see as added value?
Okay, so I think the first thing to note about Europe is that it's a region that's very fragmented. So we have many different countries with different languages, and these are naturally split into their own local chapters. But one of the key things that we found when interviewing European members and potential members is that because of the way research is funded in Europe through the European Commission, it's very important to find research collaborators across borders and also within industry. So one of the things that the Consumer Electronics Society could do in order to increase its value proposition to members in Europe is to facilitate this kind of networking and helping to find research collaborators in different countries, and especially within industry. So having that increased industry involvement that Matt and Dennis touched on earlier, I think is particularly critical to the European membership.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very glad that you brought that up. Actually, we have a lot of practice within the CE society just for that. And it's probably not unique to Europe. Many countries are doing that too. People like to go across the country border. But European Union is very, very good in doing that. They've had major milestones as a result of collaboration. Thank you for bringing that up. So now I'm going to return this microphone to Dennis, and Dennis.
I'm getting a very strong message from all of you. And I think the most important one is how to bring products to life. It seems to be exactly a wonderful mission. I think it's a wonderful mission going forward, because I have to conclude that it really is the bottom line. It's what our constituency, when they go to sleep at night, dream about. When they go to work, they dream about. They want their project to be successful. And this is more than just designing a circuit. It's designing something that will end up in a product that people will buy and be successful. And if the Consumer Electronics Society can facilitate that, then the value of a society goes from a small v to a capital V, and from a capital V to a capital value. And value is where it's at. Matt, I'm going to pass it to you, and I'd like you to kind of do the overall summation. And why don't you tell us how much fun you had doing this project?
Perfect. Yeah, I think in terms of summarizing the project overall, you really hit the nail on the head. The first thing is to figure out what the society wants to be. Where do you want to be in 10 years? What is the purpose? Why do you think members will join? And with that, you create that framework I talked about earlier that says these are where the policies and procedures and programming can be kind of validated against to see if that's what you want to take forward. So whenever you're thinking about a new initiative or a new policy or a new program, you can say, does this adhere with our mission of helping bring consumer electronics to life? If yes, then maybe it's a go. If no, it's certainly a stop. And I think that that's really kind of what we emphasized. So when we gave you these recommendations, we really hit upon that first. Define the mission, and then here's a set of policies, here's a set of programs you can roll out. It's up to you to decide which of those you want to do and how you want to implement those. So that's the kind of the wrap up of the presentation itself. But I really liked your talk about the fun this project has been. So it really has been an incredible experience. Not least because it's been 2 years now in CES, which has been a phenomenal experience. Seeing how this industry that we're doing this work to help has really evolved, but also the chance to work with this fantastic team, really international. I think we fully circled the globe. It's just been a phenomenal experience. I think we'll be friends for a long time to come as a result of the work happening here. So.
I want to say acknowledgement to Dennis. Dennis has worked on this thing for more than 2 years. He's done a lot of contributions, bringing industry contacts, money, as well as resources, brilliant minds like you guys. So, Dennis, you've done a tremendous service to the Consumer Electronics Society. And I don't want to see you guys disappear as this project is finishing. So, keep up with us. Wahab and I talk on the side, and he actually raised that question during the interactive session. He asks you guys to stay with the society. So we are looking forward to continuing this effort and to expand this effort, not just benefiting Consumer Electronics Society, but to other societies within IEEE. Thank you so much. I think we need to give them a big round of applause.